Greetings, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to only the second time I've ever done a movie review. And I don't know if something like this is going to get a bunch of clicks or views or whatever, but I'm going to do it because I have a channel, and I might as well talk about this movie because I want to talk about it, and I have so many ideas I've written down. If I look like I'm looking off screen every once in a while, I've got a list of things in front of me that I've typed out that I want to cover. This is a heavy spoiler review, as the title indicates. So if you have not seen it and you don't want the internet to spoil you, first of all, I don't know why you're watching this video. Stay off the internet in general. But don't come back to this video, bookmark this video until after you've seen it. Also, I'm going to say a lot of controversial things in this video that a lot of people on the internet are either afraid to say or just don't agree with. So feel free to disagree with me, right? Like, this is one of those things that I know some of the things I'm going to say are nitpicky, but also I teach digital storytelling for multimedia journalism majors at a college setting and have for almost 10 years. And so my job is to look at writing and pacing and believability and taking everything into context. And I have to be critical sometimes, even when it's easy just to go to a popcorn flick and be like, oh, that was amazing. I don't want to think about it. I'm very unique when it comes to how I like movies. The Christopher Nolan trilogy, I don't line up with most people. I think the best villain by far was the Joker in The Dark Knight, but the better Batman movie with better writing and storytelling was actually Batman Begins, and that The Dark Knight Rises as a whole was certified trash with some of the worst storylines and plot holes. I call that movie Batman Swiss cheese, because in the Nolan movies, that one had by far the most plot holes. Everything from sending all of the police force, like 40,000 police, into the sewers at the same time and having them come out clean-shaven, to Batman somehow, after breaking his back and having no resources, getting back to Gotham City and spending 3 hours of the time he got back putting a bat symbol worth of like kerosene and flames into a bridge. Like, I could rant for 20 minutes about how much that movie is overrated. But in the end, most people love it and most people disagree with me, and I'm fine with that. Spider-Man No Way From Home, I wanted to love more than any Spider-Man movie ever, and in some ways, there's some things about it I do, but there are some things about it I don't. The first time that I can remember a movie changing my life was around 2002, when Spider-Man 1, the first ever Tobey Maguire movie, came out. I was 14, and I was at this age where I almost felt like I had seen everything, which is hilarious because teenagers always think they've seen everything and they've seen almost nothing. And yet the movie was so unique, was so powerful. Spider-Man on screen, he looked amazing. The costume, the actors, it changed my life. And I kid you not, the first time I went to college, I wanted to be a photographer and a sports writer, but a photographer mainly because Peter Parker was a photographer. He inspired me to be a journalist, and now I hopefully inspire other people to be journalists and tell great stories, especially in a digital world that we live in. And so much of that is because of my love of Spider-Man and Peter Parker. So I wanted to love this movie so much, and I've written the pros and the cons down. And there are more pros than cons. I'm not here to just bash it. The fact that this movie exists is my first pro. It blows my mind that we live in a world where they could convince these actors to get together, that we have the CGI and the technology in place to mostly do a really good job of like bringing back Doc Ock, but making his arms more free wielding because he doesn't have to worry about them being puppets and being controlled like he did 20 years ago. If you don't believe me, look at the behind the scenes. They totally were puppets back in the day. And so the fact that this movie exists at all is amazing. We live in this world. We live in that 1 out of a billion world where this movie could actually happen and be produced and be very successful. And with that being said, I thought the two MVPs of Spider-Man 1 for me were J.K. Simmons and William Dafoe. Now, J. Jonah Jameson's different, kind of an Alex Jones feel in this case. He actually even promotes a supplement at one point, which I believe was a direct reference, an Easter egg and shot at Alex Jones. If you don't know who Alex Jones is, I guess that doesn't mean anything to you. But that was kind of funny, but also at the same time, I didn't feel with him in like a YouTube basement situation doing what felt like a video blog nearly as much of the stakes of what he used to mean to me as when he was in the Daily Bugle and was interacting with so many staff and writers and he had quips and jokes. I still prefer the J. Jonah Jameson of the original Spider-Man movies to the new one, but at least they used the same actor and had a similar variant to him. However, What maybe I would have liked to see different or more of J. Jonah Jameson, William Dafoe. MVP. He is 66 years old. He did most of his stunts for this movie, and he stole every single scene he was in. And I was sitting at a theater that was about 80% full, and it still amazes me. It was 6:30 on Thursday night. It was premiere night. It amazes me if there were any open seats in Springfield, Missouri for this broadcast. But in the end, when Doc Ock came on screen, well, I guess I shouldn't say in the end. At the beginning, when Doc Ock came on screen, there was moderate cheering. When the Green Goblin ball landed, when his explosive device landed, his pumpkin bomb, I should say, instead of ball. I sound so amateur when I say the word ball in that. When the pumpkin bomb landed, the audience erupted. And you could tell he was the GOAT, the greatest of all time in terms of what people had ranked the Spider-Man villains. And this movie backed it up in terms of how OP they are as well. William Dafoe stole every scene he was in. He deserves multiple awards. Comic book movies never seem to get awards, so I'm not sure if they will, but he deserves everything. All the flowers, as the kids would say. William Dafoe was amazing. And Doc Ock, who was only a villain because of a malfunctioning computer chip in the back of his neck, got to be the hero that he deserved. He had a redemption arc. That was amazing. As was the Daredevil cameo, though personally I would have liked to see him either don the suit once or at least be in it more than once, but I get that there's a small runtime, relatively speaking, and they only had so much they could do with it, and I'm trying to keep that open for my criticisms, which we'll get to. The banter between, yes, all three Spider-Men was amazing. I specifically loved when they asked Tobey's Spider-Man about the web fluid coming out of his arms and how jealous they were, but also kind of how grossed out they were, and there was even some innuendos about maybe some adult things that could happen with that situation that he had to clear up, which have been kind of rumors and internet debate for decades. That was amazing. I always say that there needs to be stakes in a superhero film. Stakes mean people could actually die. The Marvel movies are notorious for just not being very interesting to me. My favorite Marvel movie remains the original Iron Man because I felt like it had the most stakes. It felt the most realistic and dark and gritty. Whereas most Marvel films feel like it's a cartoon where no matter what happens, like maybe War Machine will get paralyzed from falling 14,000 feet in the air, but he won't die. Like there just isn't any stakes. And the first two Tom Hollands, I felt like he's this indestructible kid. It's the same reason why I had a huge complaint about Rey in the new Star Wars movies. They just are too powerful, too fast. I could say the same thing about Captain Marvel. There's no struggle. They're just instantly like indestructible human beings. In this case, Tom Holland not only was a lot more bloodied in this one, but emotionally he was scarred for life because he did say goodbye ultimately to Aunt May, though I do think when she got hit by the glider, instant death, right? She got this really emotional, and I will say there was a little bit of a woke, if you will, complaint when she said, with great power comes great responsibility. There was somebody next to me who was like, that's Uncle Ben's line. She can't say it. So that was a little controversial in my theater, which was surprising. But it obviously was made for the same arc of having a parental figure die right before or right after they say it. I guess right after, before wouldn't make any sense. Just because of this, too, I have to say a huge pleasant surprise with this movie is that the villains and the other Spider-Men were not just cash grabs. They actually had an integral part in the movie. They were in several scenes. I was worried that the Spider-Man would just come in at the end and everybody would cheer, sort of like Endgame with the portal scene, but they wouldn't have much dialogue. Not the case at all. They got to work together. They got to be brothers. It was a beautiful thing. And with that, my final pro, before I get to some of the cons that I didn't like, was that the redemption arc for Tobey and Andrew at the end, between Tobey curing Green Goblin and Andrew saving MJ when she was falling where he couldn't save Gwen Stacy, was incredible. When they played the best Spider-Man theme of all time, I don't care what you say, I believe it's true, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man theme with looking at his suit, I teared up. It wasn't just because of nostalgia, it was because I never thought I'd see this again, right? And it was done well. And the pacing of the movie, for the most part, especially after the first act, was so consistent that it didn't feel like a 2.5-hour movie. And that was great because I was born with the bladder of a pregnant woman and needed to go to the restroom about 30 minutes in, and somehow my body survived. But this is one of those movies where there's so much that happens in every scene. You can't go for 5 minutes to the restroom and then come back. You will miss an integral part of the movie. Now we're going to get to a few cons, and I realize, look, I've got family. My identical twin, who I love dearly, gave this movie between a 97 and 100%. He thinks it's a perfect movie. The first word he used was perfect. So anytime I brought up anything I didn't like, he hated it. It was like I was disrespecting him. And so if you're somebody that thinks this movie is perfect and any criticism is BS, you're going to hate this part of the movie. But I'm going to tell you what I think anyways. The first moment that I did not buy the storyline was Doctor Strange agreeing to the spell. I still pray, even though the odds are very slim, that really wasn't Doctor Strange. That was like Mephisto disguised as Doctor Strange, or that was a variant of Doctor Strange. He even made a couple of smirks at Peter before. I'm like, oh, Doctor Strange wouldn't do that. This is almost like if Nick Fury was a Skrull, for example, like in the past Spider-Man, spoiler again. I just didn't buy it. I don't think the Doctor Strange from Endgame would ever agree to that, because there's too much that could go wrong, and there's just no way. I didn't buy it at all. I still don't buy it. I still don't think that Doctor Strange would have done that, and no one can convince me otherwise. I just felt like that was a little bit disrespectful to the character that they had spent literally years building up his morality and his responsibility, to just be like, why not? Let's have some fun. And sort of do like a Men in Black mind eraser type thing. With that being said, also, as freaked out and excited as my theater got for both Doc Ock and Green Goblin specifically, no one clapped for the Lizard or Electro or Sandman. Now, Electro became kind of cool and had a much better costume, so I liked that arc. But Lizard and Sandman specifically, they could have just left the movie after their cameo and used those scenes to make maybe more scenes with Green Goblin and Doc Ock and maybe even Electro, and the movie would have been better to me. The Lizard and Sandman were a waste. They were underutilized. And Sandman specifically made no sense to me, because he started out as a hero because he wanted to get home. He didn't die like these other villains. He has a different arc. And so I think it would have been much better if he would have been the first person to be cured, and then they could have sent him back by himself somehow, because that would have completed his arc and he would have gotten out of the movie. When he suddenly went from a hero helping Peter to a classic villain, I thought that was lazy writing. I didn't believe it. I didn't even get it. So Lizard and Sandman could have been out, or at least make them in for the cameo, but then give that runtime to the more compelling characters on screen. Is this a version of New York City that is under COVID quarantines? Because there was like nobody in the streets. There was nobody in the apartment that had him crashing through several floors and should have come down. Obviously, they're still trying to construct the new Statue of Liberty, but there was no one around there. And I was really bothered when Green Goblin first came into it and he blew up the bridge. Remember, the pumpkin bomb goes to blow up, and then Spider-Man gets portaled from Doctor Strange back to his home basement, and we just never see how that scene ends up. And that really bothered me because it just felt incomplete. And it's like, okay, Spider-Man leaves, so after Green Goblin murders a bunch of people on the bridge, does he just fly away? Like, what happened? We don't know, because they didn't worry about writing the ending of that scene. Speaking of endings, when did Toby get stabbed straight through his stomach in other movies, even though he joked that he's been stabbed a lot? I felt like they were going to Han Solo Tobey Maguire. And I'm not saying that I was happy with it, but I respected it. When he stepped in front, caught the glider so that Tom Holland didn't have blood on his hands, and maybe sacrificed himself by being stabbed in his back, literally. If he wasn't going to die, at least show him bleeding. Like, it was like he was in a mortal cartoon. And there was just no result from that, and I didn't like it. I didn't buy it. His suit is not, I don't think, made to be able to get stabbed through it or in your back. I just thought, what? Really? Speaking of which, there are also times where Electro, and I still don't get this, you can maybe argue that with the new Tom Holland suit that he can absorb electricity, but I didn't even buy this in the Spider-Man 2 for the Andrew Garfield series. How can Spider-Man get shocked with bolts of electricity and there's just no consequence? I felt like if Electro had put the entire Statue of Liberty under electric power or shocked it, everybody touching that metal would have instantly died. Would have made a really dark movie, but the Electro stuff I just was rolling my eyes with. I was, and maybe I was the only person, but again, it's my channel, so I'm gonna talk about what I didn't like about it. Here's the most controversial part of this video, though. As much as I didn't like The Dark Knight Rises, I liked its ending better than this movie. I thought this ending was stupid and safe. Because when you are erasing everyone's memory of Peter Parker, but you're not presumably erasing that he exists, you still have all the moments that he was in those people's lives. If you erased me from your memory, right, you'd still have all my YouTube videos. If we were friends or if we were dating, if we were a family, we'd still have all the photos that maybe are on your phone or around your house. Like, there are so many visual cues that remind you. I don't know who this stranger is, but I better go looking for him or asking about him because he must be really important to me, because even though I don't remember him, he's in like all these moments in my life. They didn't think about that. They just figured we wouldn't think about it. Most people probably didn't, because I'm very unique and kind of bizarre the way I view movies. But I thought they were going to need, for that final spell, a sacrifice. And maybe if you want to keep Spider-Man alive, you sacrifice him to a different realm, similar to how Red Skull was sort of sacrificed into being in charge of the Soul Stone, and he got his sort of redemption arc at the end or middle of Endgame. So maybe you don't kill Spider-Man, but he has to leave. He has to leave, he has to go away, he has to disappear, because he has to be sacrificed, because it's his fault that all this happened. I thought they were setting up for that storyline, and I thought, way to go, Marvel, way to go, Sony, this is powerful. But they went safe because they want more money-making opportunities with this franchise, and so instead they just wiped everybody's memory, like I said, a Men in Black style, and because of that, it was just really, really lazy, and I didn't like it, and I didn't buy it, and maybe I'm the only one, but it left a bad taste in my mouth. Until an even worse taste in my mouth was the Venom post-credit scene. Imagine this scenario, because this is what I hoped would happen. Imagine that Topher Grace, the Venom that so many people hated from almost 20 years ago, 15 years ago, was walking down the street, minding his own business. And then our new Venom, who everybody loves so much more, and rightfully so, Tom Hardy, comes out and just bites his head off. And that's the Venom cameo. That would have been fan service for saying this is the real Venom. And it would have given Venom something Venom liked to do. Him being at like a bar in Mexico and talking about how he knows some of these characters, but then he gets blipped out to where he's not even in the universe anymore. And so are we going to see him and Tom Holland in the same scene like so many people? Right now it implies no. It implies somebody else is going to be Venom because the symbiote got left behind. Now maybe there's going to be a variant of Tom Hardy that gets it in this world, but it still seems kind of dumb to have to make a whole new storyline about two different Tom Hardys. I hated that. Hated it. Between that and the mind erase thing, I was out. Most people have given this movie an A to A plus grade. I give it a B to B plus. Still more positives than negatives, but I thought there was a lot of lazy writing in quite a bit of it. And speaking of which, my final con, when Aunt May died and Green Goblin flew away and the villains were off screen for a better part of the second act of the movie, where did they go? What was their motivation? If they hadn't been lured into the Statue of Liberty for the final time, what would they have done in this world? They didn't have like a plan. They didn't do anything. So I thought that needed to be in this movie. I thought there needed to be like, oh my gosh, they're starting to lash out and say, if we can't go back to our home, or we're gonna kill people, or we're going to take over the world, or just something. But they were just like chilling on their own until they had a reason to come back. And I thought that was dumb and lazy. And I'm not afraid to say it, even though I realize it is a very controversial opinion to criticize this movie at all. This is a much longer video than I ever put on my channel. This is almost 20 minutes long. And so sorry if it was too long, but I wanted to cover the pros and the cons in a methodical way that didn't make me rush. And I still like this movie. A B or B plus is still a very good grade and hard to get in my scale. Just ask my students. But at the same time, I couldn't give it an A. I couldn't give it an A plus, and I stand by my criticisms. I hope at least the Doctor Strange one is going to be explained in the Multiverse of Madness. But some of the other writing, I just felt like was lazy. And if you'd taken out most of the Lizard and Sandman opportunity and given it to Green Goblin and Doc Ock to also maybe be more of a hero with him working in the lab, I would have loved that way more. Thank Thanks for watching. Agree, disagree, that's what the comment section is for. If this is the first time you ever clicked on a video on my channel, I appreciate that you did, because I know it's not a Marvel Contest of Champions video, but hey, I still wore my Captain America shirt because, well, we're all avenging our own battles, and this was certainly a lot of battles to talk about in this film.